Welcome everyone to another Reltio community show. My name is Chris Detzel. We do have special guest, Sandro Palleschi. Sandro, really appreciate you coming in. He's from Empire Life. And the topic today is business benefits of the Reltio MDM platform. I had a chance on Friday to talk to Sandro, and it's going to be really good. So Sandro is a manager of enterprise data services, and he'll kind of, and Sandro, here in a minute, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and everything else. Here's kind of the rules of the show. Keep yourself on mute. Use the chat to ask questions. I'll make sure to answer those questions or have Sandro answer those questions. I'll ask them from the chat. And the community show will be recorded and posted to the Reltio community in the next day or two. So some upcoming Reltio community shows. Today is Empire Life. Next week, we do have a show with Michael Burke called Evolution of the Data Quality Space. Really excited to hear that. He's the director of ML and AI here at Reltio. We do have a new release coming out here in June. We'll talk about it on June 2nd. And then on the 23rd, we're doing something a little bit different. Chris Iloff, he's the director of customer success. He's been in the MDM space and built MDM practices from ground up. And he will be talking about some of those experiences in late June. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Sandro, and let you share.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle, for getting on video.
That work? You guys can see
that
my
works.
Screen?
Looks great.
Super. Well, thanks for having me, everybody. I know there's some folks at Empire Life that are also in the audience, so I'm sure they'll keep me honest as I go through this. Really quickly, the agenda I was going to follow was a brief introduction, although Chris has covered most of it already. I'm going to give you a bit of an MDM journey timeline that we've gone through. Reltio is not our first MDM platform, and I thought if I could kind of give you some context as to what we went through with our first platform and to where we are today, it'll kind of help understand some of the benefits that we're realizing just with the migration as well as the MDM platform in general. Talk about those benefits of migrating to Reltio. A quick overview of our data model, a quick overview of our architecture for the MDM platform, bullet items on the business benefits of the platform. I'll give you a list of our current consumers of the mastered party data and sort of what our future plans are for Reltio. Chris, you can just interject anytime someone has a question.
Yep.
And I'll take it then if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Super. I won't go through much detail here. This kind of describes Empire Life. There is a link, and I'll make the deck available to Chris for you folks. And there is an Empire Life story that's available at the Reltio site that goes through Empire Life in detail and a lot of the things that I'll be talking about today as well. So I won't go through any detail here. As far as our MDM journey timeline, we started with Informatica 9.6 back in June of 2013. It was an on-premise MDM platform, and it was the solution that was selected at the time, with Oracle being the database backend. We had been running Informatica from June 2013 up until July 2019. We had not done any upgrades, and that got us into a lot of trouble. So when we had to eventually migrate to 10.2, given the fact that we were no longer supported, it took us a long time. It took us over a year to do the upgrade, and we actually had to get a third party to help us with that migration. And that was one of the areas where we thought we would never want to go through that again. So at that point in time, we started looking at potential options as to how we would either deal with Informatica going forward or potentially look at another platform altogether. Our director had attended a conference, I can't remember which one it was, when he met some representatives from Reltio. And that kind of got things started. Now, Matt Cook is our director at Enterprise Data Services, who I report to. And I probably should have introduced myself. I'm Sandro Palleschi. Chris already kind of did that, but yeah, I'm the manager of Enterprise Data Services. I report to Matt, and we have the developers that report to me, which include now, I would say 1.5 MDM developers. We used to have up to 3. In any event, We ended up with a POC with Reltio, like what we saw, and then we negotiated to move to Reltio at that point in time. We redid a whole data profiling, kind of went through right from the beginning, kind of relearned everything that we had done before, and got to the point where we ended up migrating the data from Reltio in March of 2021. So at that point in time, as you can see in the graph, we ran Informatica and Reltio in parallel, where we would ingest our source system delta changes on a daily basis to both environments. And the reason why we did that was once we migrated the data, we had to then migrate, redevelop essentially all the downstream services, of which there were approximately 15 applications, and we had to kind of go through them one by one, or some of them in parallel, go through that whole development effort, and introduce those applications and point them to Reltio as they became available. So that took place between March 2021 up to December of 2021, when we cut over the last set of applications. At that point in time, we no longer had to run Informatica. We did keep it running, though, just in case we had to fall back for any reason. But everything worked out really well. We were pretty much done then in December of 2021, and then we were running Reltio by itself, and then decommitted the Informatica master data management platform in January of this year. In terms of why we went to Reltio and the benefits that we accrued as a result of that work, we had to deliver a new data model. It's obviously the data model is a bit different in the Reltio world than it was in the relational world. So we developed a new data model, and as a result, it required us to redo and review all of our mappings and kind of the way that we staged and ingested our data to conform to the new data model. Our internal resources, when we were working on Informatica, were very much in a bad position because the solution was delivered by a third party. So they pretty much had to learn it on the fly, and we were often in React mode, dealing with new business requirements and just managing the platform on premise. As a result, the migration really gave us a much better and complete understanding of the MDM delivery front to back. So we got to sort of relearn everything again and uncover a lot of design flaws with the original solution. We were attracted to the cloud native solution that Reltio provided, fully managed SaaS solution, obviously to lower our infrastructure costs and increase our agility to deliver business value. The other vendors that we had looked at, when we looked at their products, they were pretty much on-premise products that were ported to the cloud. Reltio was the only true cloud native MDM platform that we had looked at, and kind of ticked all the boxes for us. The high availability that's inherited in a SaaS solution was very important to us because we didn't have that with our existing platform. And the cost of getting a high availability solution using Informatica and Oracle as our database was going to be very costly for us. And then ultimately, the whole API delivery of Reltio aligned to our API microservices, the way that we develop code at Empire Life. So it aligned nicely with APIs and microservices. And the rich library of API calls replaced the complex SQL that we had against Oracle in our previous environment. We reduced the risk of operating a mission critical system. Again, being a SaaS cloud platform that had HA built in, had dynamic scaling, has high performance, it's secured a very stable platform. And that was really important to us, being a highly regulated industry. Getting the enhancements that we get on a quarterly basis into our tenant with zero downtime and no internal IT involvement is also very important. And then it did allow us to decommit what turned out to be a very extensive technical debt with our existing MDM platform. So right now we're getting to focus more on business delivery and less on kind of maintaining the environment. As you could probably witness for yourselves, it's a much superior user interface and tenant console capabilities than what we were used to on the Informatica side. The licensing model was much better. We were used to be licensed on the number of crosswalks. using sort of the Reltio term, as opposed to golden profiles like it is right now, and the way that it's modeled in Reltio, and that's a significant cost savings for us. We had, I would say, not a great relationship with our previous vendor. Very little focus on new features and customer value. We were assigned a customer success manager while we were going through the migration project, and the relationship with Reltio has remained very strong. Again, Reltio using Google Cloud Platform as their in-house digital development was also exclusively GCP, so everything really aligned well with our environment. Here's our data model. Really quickly, everything you see in green is essentially what we define and configure in Reltio in the data model, which is very simple when you compare it to the data model, the way that it used to look like. As you can see, we have mastered party. Party for us are either customers or advisors. The Empire Life is using the Reltio connected data platform with the Account 360 solution accelerator. It includes a data model for business to business, B2B business processes. And we use the master data for life and health insurance policyholders, as well as the related parties on those contracts and brokers and advisors that we sell through. So the party is what we master. Parties can be either customers or advisors. It's broken up into three entity types. We have 3.5 million individual profiles, 2.17 thousand company or organizational profiles, and 4.6 reference profiles. We have 3.75 contract profiles. Contracts were either individual policies or investment accounts with our customers, or their advisor agreements with our distribution channel. Then between party and contract, essentially are our relationships. We have 17.75 million party to contract relationships, and there are different types of party to contract relationships. We have 7.11 million contract to contract relationships and 3.35 million party to party relationships. So by looking at the numbers, relationships is really, really key to everything that we do in a master data management platform. And that the numbers kind of bear that out. Is there any questions on that?
Not yet.
Okay. A very high level architecture. We ingest our source data in batch today. So on a daily basis, we will get the delta changes from all our backend systems. And through Informatica data quality tool, we will land those changes after we've curated and standardized the data. The net changes go through a Pentaho ETL process where we load it from the staging tables that are in a SQL Server. We actually use the Reltio Rocks utility by taking the JSON that we create through PDI off of all the delta changes by source system, and we load it into Reltio using the Rocks utility. We do have an initiative where we're going to move that to the data loader, but at the time that we were doing the migration, we had some issues with the data loader, so we started using the Rocks utility, and that's actually worked out really well for us. We have a number of back office systems on different formats. We ingest data directly from relational databases like SQL Server, Sybase, and DB2, as well as extracts that we get from some of our older systems through Relativity, their vSAM files. Once it gets into Reltio, then it does all the magic. It does all the matching and merging on the fly. Everything that you configure from survivorship rules and your match rules to create the golden profiles and manage the crosswalks and the relationships that we've loaded. And then I just and I'll talk about this later on, but we have a number of consumers either directly against Reltio through APIs or through the UI. We also go use the export API utility to create a relational copy of the Reltio data model. And that really comes in handy for a lot of reasons, which I'll get into in a bit. So we consume data directly in real time with Reltio through APIs, but we also have access to the relational copy of the data usually for extracts, but also for other reasons. Metrics, for example, are much easier to do relationally than it is to do through the APIs. Jumping to the benefits of using Reltio, which is kind of the core of what we wanted to present today. We have found a much more improved customer experience and customer service productivity with Reltio. The UI is very intuitive. The ability to access accurate, timely data has really increased our first call resolution rate from what we were used to on the Informatica side. Increased data and data pipeline quality. The migrations helped us identify and remediate numerous data quality issues that we had with the MDM platform. Going from having to redo it all over again, we had to kind of review all the mappings and kind of reviewed the way that it was initially designed. So that helped us uncover a whole bunch of data quality issues. The MDM platform in general, as you guys probably have seen, helps you also identify a lot of issues that you'll have in your back office systems. So we've seen a lot of data quality issues that have come from source. Things like missing contact information, data births are different for the same person in different source systems. We've had business processes that kind of overwrote the crosswalk or the source record with a whole different person. And when that comes into Reltio, because it's an existing crosswalk, it tends to corrupt. It tends to corrupt the golden profile. So we've had to uncovering those business process issues has helped us clean those kinds of issues up, and we don't run into those kinds of sort of cross-pollination of individuals and organizations where the crosswalks got reused. The data profiling that we did from the beginning again helped us improve the match and survivorship rules. So we got much better match performance as a result of the migration. The simplified data model has reduced our production support, troubleshooting, and triaging significantly. Today, one API call can return the entire profile. In the relational world, because it's highly normalized, you had to create, probably in our case, one primary table with about five or six dependent tables, and then you got complex SQL to kind of join all that data and bring it in a view that we get through one API call in Reltio. So that's been very productive for us. Again, being highly regulated, audit compliance and security is really important, obviously. So the activity log, as you see in the UI, captures everything historically, who made the updates, where the updates came from, when they came, and having that out of the box is huge. In the environment that we were in before, we had to deliver those kind of views of the history and the history of the changes through SQL against what were called infrastructure tables. But we had to pretty much build that ourselves. This comes out of the box. And being able to see it at the dashboard, which gives you obviously that you can search and query through, but also being able to provide the activity log at the entity level and at the relationship level is huge for triaging. So you can see the whole history of how the changes were applied to the relationships and to the entities themselves. The security model seemed a lot easier for us to integrate and using the console to maintain the users and the user accounts and the roles and the privileges that they were allowed to have, the credentials that they were given. So that's easy to manage and to see in the console. Higher business and IT productivity. Using the contextual user interface, it's designed for business users, representatives. The color-coded crosswalks enables us to identify everything, pretty much, the lineage back to the source systems. Also helps us understand how to manage the data in the source systems by looking at it graphically through the crosswalk view in the UI. The manual match and unmerge is really, really easy, as you've probably seen in the UI, completely auditable via the activity log. Another huge benefit is managing the potential match pool. You see it in the dashboard and you can search on it by the various match, like manual match rules that you may have. That's really important for us. We started with a match pool of about 75,000 potential matches when we were in the Informatica world. We had brought that down recently, down to 20,000 potential matches. And we have action plans to kind of bring it down to 10,000. You're never going to get to zero with potential matches, but you want to be able to get it down to a manageable number that can be actioned by the data stewards. So getting that number down was a significant productivity improvement for us on the Reltio platform. And just, again, being able to search on the potential matches has been very valuable for us, as well as being able to help tweak the match rules. When we went through the migration, we had to help the developers learn how to use the Reltio library of API calls. Once we went through that with the developers, and we tend to only use 3 APIs in everything that we do in Reltio. We either use the entities, the relations, or the IHOP, the IHOPs, sorry, not the IHOPs, but the hops API calls. That's it. That covers, I would say, the equivalent of probably, if I can think back at our inventory, over 100 different SQL scripts that we would have used and built to deliver to our downstream services were essentially replaced with 3 API calls that had different filters and different selection criteria. So that's how easy it was to do the migration, and how easy it is to maintain the code. But once we went through that learning curve, developers that used to rely on us for the SQL, for the MDM platform, they pretty much understand how the Reltio API calls work. And so they can start building net new requirements themselves with very little consultation from my team.
Hey, Sandro, quick question. Yeah. And I was just kind of curious. Last time we spoke on Friday, you mentioned that you were going to start using or thinking about using the relevance-based matching. Does that kind of come into play on bullet 2 or whatever, kind of to knock down some of the matching stuff that you're doing there?
Yeah, I have a slide on our roadmap going forward, but yeah, I'll talk about it when I get there. But thanks, cool. Thanks for bringing that up. The clone capability, so Reltio now allows you to request a clone of your production environment into your test environment, I believe once a month. We just started to take advantage of that. And it's probably easy to take for granted that capability is there. Trying to do that in the MDM platform was pretty much impossible. We pretty much had to re-ingest all the data and through a one-time load to kind of sync up our pilot environment with our production environment. That took days to run, believe it or not. This clone, the way that it works right now, it does affect our pilot tenant for about a day. But other than that, though, it's a complete copy of the data, right down to the URIs. And so that really does help with our development and a lot of our projects that take advantage of production data in order to do a lot of their test cases. It's very difficult to recreate some of the use cases when we're testing new requirements without having production data and production volume data. So the clone capability in Reltio is a really big advantage. I've talked about... Yeah.
Sandro, a few questions here starting to pour in now. How was the Reltio API performance in your case?
For us, it's been really, really good. I mean, when we replaced the SQL calls, which were complex, and not only were they complex, we had to use materialized views to improve performance, if you folks know what materialized views are. But it's essentially been able to pre-join a lot of the data and create temporary tables, or they're actually permanent tables, but it already encapsulated a lot of the navigation that we had to do and was causing us some grief from a performance perspective. But when we rewrote them into API calls using the Reltio APIs, for us, the performance was at least as good, but more often it was better than what we were getting going after Oracle with SQL.
That's awesome. So I see that you're using I'm going to say this wrong, but Pentaho ETL to load in Reltio and extract the Reltio. So a few questions, maybe he's jumping ahead, he's not sure, but were you using SQS and DBS scan to extract? That's one question out of 3.
No, we weren't using, we were just using the source system data that was coming to us was a combination of extracts that were produced for us from some of the older systems, or we directly went to the databases and we were able to create the data that we needed to populate the MDM platform based on the parties, the related parties, and the contracts that were of interest to us in the MDM platform. We didn't have any other utilities other than using, well, in our case, it was IDQ, the Informatica Data Quality was our ETL tool for ingesting data from source.
What's the average time of extraction given the volume of your data?
So we do deltas now. It's actually a good question. The process of ingesting delta data, we have a change data capture process that was designed by our developers that takes full copies of the source data, does a CDC process, which gets the delta changes, and then we apply the delta changes. The batch window for us to absorb the data from all our back office source systems, it varies, right? But I would say it's, and I wish I had JP here, but I think it was, we're probably looking at 5 to 6, 7, 8 hours to do that on a batch nightly basis. We brought that down about by 3 hours so far, and probably going to bring it down even further. So our ability to manage the daily cycle of our data coming in from our source systems is probably less than 4 hours now on a nightly basis.
Speed is important. Assuming mastering of the data is done in Reltio, do you enrich data outside of Reltio?
There is some enrichment done, more standardization and curation more than anything. I wouldn't say it's enriching. Reltio has locate for address, as you know. We had address doctor on the ETL side. Our experience with address cleansing and standardization has been much better using locate than it was with address doctor. So it's no longer part of the ETL process where we do that data cleansing and standardization is actually part of the MDM ingestion now. It performs better, and the verification, verifying the address based on, in our case, Canada Post for the most part, has been outstanding. So that's the enrichment that we're getting out from locate. We are looking at enriching the data with other third-party applications down the line, but for the most part, it's what we're ingesting from our back office systems.
Great. Do you know the API return time in milliseconds?
We can get it and it is at milliseconds. Our SLAs are at the API level. It's 3 seconds or lower, whatever, 95% of the time. And we've met all our SLAs when it comes to the APIs. We actually also, like I mentioned, we export the data to a relational database, DB2 in our case, and we export it every night, so we keep it in sync. That export runs really quickly. It's like less than an hour and a half, and we get an entire copy of the data into a relational format. And I haven't really given you a picture of what that looks like, but if you look at our data model, we have a table for the party entity, we have a table for the contract entity, and we have a separate table for every relationship. And then obviously the foreign key, primary key, foreign key relationships between them all. But that export API works really, really quick.
Great. And some comments here. It's actually extraction from Reltio to other SQS versus DBS scan from the previous question. And then one comment is both export API gives to good performance, if not great, but really good option to extract APIs. Let's see here. Scan API might degrade performance and slower. Try to, and let me see if there's other questions here. So time to market. So time to market. About what % faster does the team deliver on like the new business requirements? And how many people work to deliver on delivery on new business requirements? Do you know?
Yeah, well, so in the Informatica platform, we had up to 3 MDM developers working full-time, managing the environment and making changes. In Reltio now, we're down to 1.5. And even then, most of the time now is on delivering new requirements, not managing the environment. So our ability to deliver business requirements has been greatly enhanced. When I say time to market, The way that you can make changes to the data model, and when you're configuring survivorship rules, changes to the match rules, for example, it's days to do that work. In Informatica, it was weeks to do that work, to develop it, to change it, to be able to test it, and then be able to move it to production. You're going from a model where it took us weeks to do that kind of work to being able to do that within our agile sprints, our 2-week sprints. So it's an order of magnitude difference in time to market. And the number of developers that we have on the MDM side is right now is down to 1.5 developers essentially doing that work. But again, so people that ingest data from the party have their different development team, but they can turn around, like I said, they can turn around the new requirements so much more quicker, because again, it's essentially 3 different APIs that we leverage over and over again, right? So once you've created the template, it just makes it easy for net new requirements to how you would consume that data through the Reltio APIs. I don't know if that helps. Just the previous question with getting data out of Reltio, from an analytics and business reporting perspective, I have to say right now, we have taken advantage of the relational copy of the data model. It's a little bit easier for us to do some of the heavy navigation that's required at the relationship side. And those relational tables that we've created through the export API makes that ability to do metrics and to do analytics on the data a lot quicker than it was going directly to Reltio APIs. Although, there are use cases where we want to use Reltio APIs directly. In our case, it's Power BI is the platform that we use for reporting and analytics.
Got it. Just 2 more questions, and then we'll let you go on.
Yeah.
It's really good. Do you have additional layer between your consuming application and Reltio?
What do you mean an additional layer? Do you mean like, so we have applications that directly access Reltio?
I think you answered that question.
Oh, okay.
So between Reltio and the downstream application that uses your data, you have put a relational model in between.
Well, only for some use cases. Like I said, and I'll go through some of I will review the consumers of the Reltio platform in another slide, and I'll give you the distinction there.
And the reason only I ask is for one main reason is that if you have customer data, it's a lot of compliance, security things comes into play when you replicate MDM data into a non-MDM environment. Plus, there is the governance part also. So I just wanted to understand from your implementation, like why did you create this and how useful it was in terms of performance?
Yeah, so performance for sure. Like again, because if you look at our data model, it's everything. The value that you get from an MDM party mastering party data, the golden profiles obviously are important. But to get to the golden profiles, everything is relationship driven, right? All the use cases are relationship driven. So navigating the relationships is kind of the key to performance. And so the reason why we created the relational copy, it made that navigation a little bit easier. You make a good point about security, and there is security that needs to be built into the relational copy, as well as, in our case, leveraging the roles in the Reltio platform directly to manage what you can see and who can see it.
So all these, bear with me if I'm going
to
take your time, but isn't it all this could be nested attributes in Reltio, and you could have got all the payload from one single API? Then I'm just wondering, why would you say that you as a consumer or you as a user of Reltio have to look into the relationship objects or how the data is connected? I think that's a Reltio API would do for you.
No, maybe the best way to describe it, I guess, is that yes, absolutely, you can get the relationships through the APIs. It's when you're wanting to aggregate and you have use cases that you want to report on, where you want to look at. An example would be if I want to find out someone that has individual business with us, as well as investment business with us, as well as potentially an active certificate on our group system. That kind of navigation and trying to do that in bulk when you're looking at metrics, that's much easier to do relationally.
More analysis work that you want to
It's run. The analysis side, exactly.
Pricing data. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, the real-time access is really, it is really focused on at the contract level or the profile level. So you don't have to have the need to worry about it being relational. Yeah. But the analytics side, it does help on the analytics side and the reporting side. Yeah.
And the relational database, is it Oracle?
No, in our case, it's DB2.
DB2.
Yeah, and we had the ability to create a copy of that even when we were on the Oracle side, because even when we had Informatica on Oracle, it was the Informatica data model, right? And the way that you define the business objects in Informatica, and so there was some structure to it. We kind of put it into a structure that made sense to us afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that help? Yeah, it does.
Great discussion. One last question, and then we'll continue to go.
Sure.
So you said 1.5 hours for nightly sync to DB2. How long would it take to more frequent Delta syncs? So let's say every 30 minutes.
Minutes. We actually do deltas now to that relational environment, and so we have talked about that as doing it more often. And it takes minutes, like less than 30 minutes, to sync it up on a delta. So we would like. Well, there's two things. We would like to do that obviously more frequently. And as I'll talk about in our slide near the end, we want to start taking advantage more of event streaming and being able to do things in real time using PubSub or Kafka and do that as an event process as opposed to a batch process, a batch ETL process.
Great. Thanks, Sandro.
How are we doing for time?
We have 20 minutes, so we're good.
Yeah, I'll whip through this. I apologize if I go too fast here. Just a few more slides to go through. One of the other, and I won't go through every bullet item here. The business engagement on the MDM platform is critical for you to have a successful MDM platform. And we did not have that on the Informatica side initially. It was very much an IT-driven initiative to bring in Informatica MDM platform. So IT kind of drove it, right? And so adoption of what we call the party hub or the mastering of party data was probably not compromised, but we didn't take advantage of it as much as we should have had the business engagement been a lot higher. When we went to the migration of Reltio, and so from the time we went from Informatica to Reltio, obviously we started to get applications that started to use the party data. But when we did the migration, the steering committee was made up of senior executives on the business level, as well as our chief technology officer who sponsored the Reltio migration. That engagement alone, as well as demonstrating and doing sort of presentations on the UI for Reltio, really ramped up the understanding of master data management. One thing, and I brought the UI up, I think a few times already, but what we were used to and trying to explain or describe master data using the Reltio UI is like day and night. It was so obvious by looking at the way that you guys have sort of graphically represented profiles and the dashboard and the ability to look at the relationships, navigate to the party data from the contract and vice versa, looking at the activity log, looking at some of the dashboard metrics. It just made understanding mastered party data much easier. And so different areas within the business obviously started to see the value, not only of what we've already delivered with the Party Hub, but could start to look and think of future use cases of how we would use the data, how we would ingest contact information from multiple sources, for example, how we could sync up, say, the address across every footprint that person had for that address back in the back office systems. So lots of use cases are now coming up, and they're coming from the business as opposed to IT driving it, which shows you, how the adoption of master data has really improved as we've gone to Reltio than it was when we had Informatica. It was very, very much more technical presentations on the Informatica side. The Reltio side allows us to deliver that message more in business terms and business graphics. And that's kind of why I was getting through the business engagement, the bullet items here, and the data stewards, our customer service reps, our business operations folks, all the users of the UI and or the applications that I'll show you has really magnified the value and the use of party data going forward. Just the last bullet here. I think I briefly talked about it, but Power BI is our reporting and analytics platform. So the data that the single view of customer and the single view advisor context is provided by Reltio. Having said that, we leverage the relational copy of that data to deliver the reporting and analytics side, because it does deal with metrics, right, as opposed to actual profiles. So that's a value added use case for the relational copy of the data. But the single view of customer, single view of advisor is critical pretty much to anything that we do in an insurance and investment company. So Reltio provides that context, obviously, through the match rules, survivorship rules, and we've been able to leverage that across a lot of use cases. I think I've covered probably most of this. We onboard applications quicker using bots. Bots go access Reltio as well through the APIs. Excuse me. Our customer and advisor portals are probably the main users and the main benefits that you see visually with party data. So that's covered in the bullet items that I provided here. We have any money laundering and terrorist reporting extracts that are delivered from Reltio. We have reinsurance. So these are the consumers, the current consumers of party data. Customer portal, which is where our customers can register and look at all their holdings. They can see their investment and insurance policies. They can see the related parties like the beneficiaries, the insureds. They can see a history of their, or they can see their holding values. Now the values come from a different application, but Reltio provides the context and the bridge to those policies and accounts, and then the details about the policies and accounts comes from our integrated integration data platform, which is a DB2 environment. So that's the other reason why creating a relational copy of the data model is really helpful. It allows us to join to the detailed contract data that we have in our enterprise platform. So you can't do that, obviously, with joining APIs to other relational tables. Having a relational copy allows us to do that. So we have an advisor portal, then we have the distribution advisor portal itself. So the customers on the one side and the folks that actually sell and organizations that sell the business, they have the ability to view all the policies that they service from an Empire Life perspective. Hierarchy, which I haven't talked about, which you see as a out-of-the-box capability in Reltio, really came in handy for us. We kind of had to programmatically deliver hierarchy in the old platform. Hierarchy as a facet, or hierarchy as a capability that's built in out of the box with supporting API calls, for us was really huge. And it gives you a graphical representation of the relationships that are managed through the hierarchy. And then we use that for advisor hierarchies.
Hey, Sandro.
Yeah.
What is your team size supporting your Reltio instance? So across like admins, ETL developers, configurator support, data stewards, et cetera. What does that look like?
So for developers, we have, as I mentioned, only down to 1.5 now. And they do all the configuration, any data modeling changes, matching, merging. We have I shouldn't say that. We also have an enterprise data analyst, and she's actually probably on this. She helps a lot with match and merge rules. She helps with working with the data stewards, helping with providing potential match reports that help the data stewards. We have, I would say, probably 4 or 5 active data stewards, but they're not full-time. They just do that. They do that role part-time right now, but they use the UI, obviously, to do the data stewardship role. And then we probably have about 80 customer service reps that use the UI. They don't develop or maintain anything, but they take advantage of the UI and they deal with customer calls using the UI, which for them, they've lauded the UI quite extensively, the value that they've gotten from the UI and being able to see the single view of the customer and be able to relate with the customer on that has been really important. So
hey, Sandro.
Yeah.
Are you leveraging the sync back to your source systems, or you are satisfied with the customer service reps accessing Reltio?
We are satisfied with the customer services access in Reltio. There are other things that they have done in the past where they've captured notes and things like that in different systems that they still rely on for other reasons. But when it comes to the customer data, the accuracy and the integrity of that customer data, absolutely, it is highly trusted.
Thank you.
So one other question, and let me see if I can do this right, but how the mastering app manages when there is an outage or downtime at Reltio, on Reltio's side. I guess how do you manage that app, the mastering piece, when there's downtime of Reltio?
So one of the things is there's very little downtime. In fact, there's no downtime with Reltio. So anything that we need to do when it comes to updating the data model, for example, if we had to make a change, that doesn't require any downtime. When we do an enhancement, we get them out of the box from Reltio, there's no downtime. We've only encountered, since we've cut over, which would have been March 2021, we've only ever had one hit where the tenant was unavailable for about, I'm trying to remember how long it was. Might have been about up to 30 minutes. And you guys now have a status page that tells us if there are issues. That was corrected by Reltio. We had a couple of consequences as a result of it that we were able to clean up. But that was really the only time we've ever had a hit on the tenant since we've gone live.
Thank you.
Does that answer that question? Or?
I think so.
Okay. So I talked about the other consumers, so the portals, obviously, the bots use Reltio. The consolidated view of Customer Advisor is applied to Power BI reports through the relational copy that we have. We have extracts integrations to CRM systems. We have 3 CRM systems. One's on-prem and the other 2 is on the cloud. Reltio is used for anti-money laundering and terrorist reporting extracts, which are important, obviously, but for being able to identify those use cases for the business. It also helps us with our reinsurance business. So when you want to see the exposure you have at a life perspective for someone, for example, may have multiple policies and they may be insured for millions of dollars, right? Once it gets to a certain threshold, the company will reinsure that risk to other reinsurers or other insurance companies. So being able to identify when you've hit the threshold and understand when that feeds into the reinsurance treaties is important, right? So you don't get exposed in case you have, a lot of death claims in a period of time. And like I mentioned, being able to leverage the API to create the relational copy of the data has been really important to us.
So quick question, have you had a chance to utilize the Reltio's workflows? And if so, can you add any points on complexity of workflows that you developed?
So we have started. The resource that was working on the workflows is no longer with us. But she did really good work for us, and we are going to continue to leverage it, mostly on the helping with the data stewards and identifying potential matches as kind of our initial use case. The out-of-the-box workflow can take you so far. But I guess what we found out with it, and again, with the potential match use case that we were looking at, was there's going to be some customized, in the case of that particular use case, there's going to be some customized Java development that we weren't prepared for, that we're going to have to look into a little bit more detail and to be truly exploit the workflow capabilities that are there. But there are some out of the box that are helpful. I think when you get into some of the more complex use cases that you want for workflow, you're probably going to have to use that Java development as well on top of that.
What's kind of the biggest challenge faced in Reltio and your approach to counteract?
The biggest challenge, I think, to this point, I think had been with the migration, just going from a whole different data model and being able to work through all the downstream services, as well as sort of communicate the benefit of why we were going that route, was a huge challenge for us. We did partner with Reltio. I'm not sure if Joel Snipes is on the call or not, or on the webinar. He was our technical developer with Reltio, and he was outstanding. So he really helped us a lot. But that migration effort was the biggest challenge we've had at this point. It wasn't a Reltio issue particularly. It just that it was such a big change and involved impact to a lot of applications and being mission critical, keeping the environment going, the existing environment going while we were moving to a new environment and running them in parallel with a very small team. At that point, we were down to 2 folks. That was a huge challenge. And the team did a great job. I have to say, and I mean, an outstanding job. And we were able to deliver in the migration without impacting the business. And even when we did the cutovers to production, we minimized the impact to the business when we did those cutovers.
Great. And last question, because we've got a slide to get through, but did you utilize LCA in Reltio? And if yes, was it useful?
Remind me what that is again. I've forgotten the terminology.
Chetan, can you?
Life cycle actions.
So I'm sorry, I missed that.
It's a life cycle actions, Sandro.
I mean, it sounds familiar. I can't off the top of my head.
Maybe I'll give you a hint.
Sandro, it's Sarah. Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, Sarah. Yeah.
No, the life cycle action, we did talk about it on the implementation. It's a customization. And I remember you guys did not end up.
Okay. That's probably why I'm not familiar with it then. Yeah. So sorry. Yeah, that answers your question.
Thanks.
I think I've only got, this is the last slide. So what we're planning to do going forward, the move to relevancy match rules. So I know you brought that question up earlier, Chris. We see a lot of value in the relevancy match, and Annika, who's on the webinar, is doing that work and looking at investigating the use of relevancy match rules. Because for us, we kind of have a set of pairs of match rules. We have the auto rule that matches on the fly, and then we have almost a somewhat equivalent manual rule with fuzzy matches and kind of different criteria, but they're sort of pairs, right? They come in kind of pairs. With relevancy match rules, you can kind of do that all in one rule, and you set the thresholds. At a certain threshold, it's automatic, and then the other threshold, below the threshold, it becomes a potential match. So there's a lot of value there that we certainly think we're going to be able to probably cut down our match rules in half as a result of going to relevancy match rules. So Annika's already been looking into, I think the customer ones is the first one she's looked at. And I think the testing that she's done has shown that we're probably going to get more effective matching as a result and be able to match and be able to manage our potential matches a little bit better as well. Real-time data ingestion. So everything right now is essentially batch for the most part on our back office systems, but with third-party aggregators, looking at Reltio Integration Hub without having to do ETL development and directly connect to be able to bring data in real time, as well as obviously have our consumers access Reltio in real time. That through either through the Reltio Integration Hub or through event-driven updates in and out of Reltio, we want to make the experience in and out of Reltio to be more real-time. Expanding the use. Preference and consent is out of the box and works beautifully for us. We only have one use case that we migrated to, which was for e-statements, preferences that the customers had signed up for, but there are a whole slew of use cases where we want to take advantage of this. And certainly the compliance with the Canadian anti-spam legislation comes into this, but those of you that have been involved with security and been involved with privacy, there are a lot of use cases here. And all of them we're facing in our industry. And we have high confidence in the ability to be able to manage that information in Reltio with the out-of-box capabilities that are already there. Reference data management, we use them for lookups as they're intended, but the mapping to the canonical values from multiple back office systems where something like gender, for example, has different representations, we ended up doing that in the ETL process. And so we want to migrate that and manage that directly in Reltio and taken full advantage of RDM. So we didn't really take advantage of reference data management capabilities very well when we did the migration. And now that we've done it, we certainly want to circle back and take full advantage of what RDM can do and reduce the work that we're doing on the ETL side. Bidirectional updates back to source. So now we ingest data. For example, we update addresses and contact information. But if that person exists in multiple back office systems, we don't go back and resync it across all those touch points. That's something that we want to do, is to be able to have a full bidirectional ingestion and maintenance of party data across Reltio and back to the source systems where the data came from. We're starting to see more data quality capabilities within the MDM platform in Reltio. So we'd like to take advantage of that and again, reduce where we're doing equivalent things in the ETL process. So try to replace ETL cleansing and standardization with the corresponding capabilities that are becoming available directly in the MDM platform as you ingest the data from source is something that we want to get more involved with. We don't use interactions today, but we do want to start using them going forward. The one use case that we're looking at is keeping track of when customers log into the customer portal. There are a lot of sort of communication use case touch points that the business wants to take advantage by knowing, how often someone logs on to the customer portal. When's the last time they went on the customer portal? So from a marketing perspective, from an overall customer experience perspective, we see interactions and some use cases there that we think will help the overall user experience. I talked a little bit about the privacy and compliance. So there's a lot in data privacy and compliance that we need to align to. So the ability to what you can see in the UI, what you can see through the APIs, who can see them, who should be allowed to see them. We have a kind of a unique situation where our staff policy, obviously, and the profiles that come out of our staff policy are in Reltio. We don't want everyone to be able to see, obviously, everybody else's investments from internal Empire Life employees. So we got to build in through the roles the ability only for certain customer service reps to be able to look at employee information, and they don't want anyone else to be able to see that, which makes a lot of sense. Things like SIN number, maybe only allow the SIN number to be viewed by certain folks and not everybody, and things like that. There's a lot of use cases there. So we have to do it in two places. I forget who the gentleman was that asked the question earlier, but data privacy and compliance applies to not only our RDM platform, but the copy that we've made as well in the relational format. And then leveraging the workflow to be able to automatically notify customer service reps and data stewards for various use cases like potential matches that it just came through that night, that kind of thing. So I know I whipped through that. I hope I didn't go too fast, Chris, but hopefully covered what most folks were looking for in the values.
Sandro, this is really great. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about your experience. I think you're the first person to do that on the community, and so we are looking for others to do this as well. There are a couple questions, unfortunately, we didn't get to.
I can hang on if they want to hang on for a few minutes.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask two questions then. The first question is it for global implementation or data for the only U.S. insurers or global customers?
We're actually Canadian. We're a Canadian insurance company. So it's Canadian. We're a Canadian insurance company. Most of our customers, well, overwhelming number of customers are Canadians, but we do have international customers as well. And right. By the way, locate comes in handy there for addresses when they're international addresses. Out of the box, we get the verification and standardization across the international addresses as well.
Great. Loic, thanks for putting your video on, but what would be your feedback on implementing in prod environment relevance-based match rules and Match IQ?
So Match, I don't know if I mentioned Match IQ. That's something we do want to take advantage of. So being able to better understand the effectiveness of our match rules. So being able to exploit that a little bit more. The work that Anik has done on relevancy matching in our team, we're getting positive results. The ability to define that sort of as a potential match initially to do the testing really helps, right? So we can kind of compare how things are being matched right now with our existing rules. We introduce the relevancy rules and we kind of see what the behavior is like, and it helps us gauge the effectiveness of those relevancy rules and help us understand what thresholds we should be setting to determine whether it should be an automatic merge versus automatic match versus a potential match.
So just some comments here. Great presentation. Thank you, Sandro. It was really helpful. And then this was awesome. And thanks for organizing this. Very helpful. Fantastic presentation from somebody that has been doing this for a long time as well. So thank you, chat. Just over and over, like it was really appreciated. And so this was really awesome. So Sandro, thank you so much. This was a great session. Somebody said I would really appreciate if we can do some sessions of the best practice and biggest challenges faced. I like it. And I will try to push some people, customers and alike, to try to do some more of these because I think they're extremely valuable. This will be posted by the end of the week. It's my goal. And it will be on community.reltio.com under the events and then past events on the community. So